Okay, it's hard to get. Sometimes it's amazing how even in this modern age, it's very difficult to get a signal, even in a forest. GPS doesn't work, but that's probably a good thing. There's a clearing behind me, and that's probably why I'm finally able to get a signal. I recently had an argument with a Christian, nothing new there, regarding. They said something. They said that when Jesus died on the cross, that was the end of all sacrifice. That was the end of all sacrifice. And I said, well, what do you mean by sacrifice? And he says, well, you pagans were killing people, setting them alive in fires, setting them fire alive, and sacrificing them on rocks for your idolatry. And even if you go to places like Stonehenge, you have something called the slaughter stone, where apparently druids slaughtered virgins. It's all nonsense. It's all, you see. These people dress up as druids and go to Stonehenge. A lot of that is they're the same lineage of the people who came up with terms like the slaughter stone, the same aristocrats. But I want to, as one of the ways we can actually restore paganism, and it really is coming back, but to speed up this process. I have to say, I was amazed looking down my social media feed on Midsummer, Glad Midsummer, by the way, Sona Beltane, Sona Iraq, and belated solstice greetings. But it was refreshing to see the amount of women and their little children with flowers in their hair for the midsummer. And it shows that it's really happening. But we can speed up that process. We can speed that process up. Now, one of the things we can do is return to sacrifice. Now, how do we do this? Well, I've I've been doing a lot of spending time in England and Wales on the borders there, and I'm very interested in that kind of crossover period. It goes with the Druid Code idea of the end of paganism, Celtic paganism, the merger into Roman paganism, and then eventually into early Christianity. And that place, the English-Welsh borders, is right down that where the area is full of that stuff, and you can find Christian churches with Roman shrines in them built on Celtic sites. It's really quite amazing. We don't have that here in Ireland, and it's all part of the thing of the ancestors and the snakes returning. Regarding the sacrifice thing, well, if nowadays, if I go to a pagan site or a pagan, even a modern pagan statue or something in a park, I make a sacrifice. Now, I don't kill something, well, not kill an animal. What I do is I buy flowers, either flowers or I buy organic vegetables and fruit, and I lay them at the feet of the icon or whatever. And you have to buy them with your own money, your own hard-earned money. So don't shoplift them, or get someone else to buy them for you, because that's not a sacrifice. So what you do is, and rather than prayer, is you leave that fruit there and let the especially in winter, it's great, the birds can eat it. I put bird seeds sometimes down as well. If you don't live in Europe, you live in North America, or remember, we're all pagans, or you live in Africa or Asia or Australia, we're all pagans, every one of us is a pagan. You can do something similar. You can go to your local woods or forest and you can leave fruit that you bought. I know even people who leave meat out for predators in winters, for foxes and stuff like that. They actually buy steak mince and put it outside for animals, and you've made a sacrifice. Now, isn't that incredibly better than, say, if you're a Catholic and you go to confession and you spill your guts out to some guy who's probably a pedo, or just knobbing women in the neighborhoods while lecturing everyone else on not using birth control, and he knowing all your personal problems and your personal secrets and then blasting them all out. See, before people put all their bullshit on the internet and Facebook, the Catholic Church used to do that. The priest used to tell their housekeepers what people were saying in confession. In fact, there's a song, an Irish rebel song called "The Croppy Boy," and it's about the 1798 United Irishmen uprising, where Catholics and Protestants said, screw the British government, we're joining forces and we're going to war to free this country. And it really did happen. Catholics and Protestants in Ireland joined forces together. Of course, when that rebellion was crushed, they were the most brutally treated of all. In fact, the Lia Fáil stone at the Hill of Tara, there was a battle on the Hill of Tara between the United Irishmen and the British Army, with the United Irishmen lost. And they murdered something like 5,000 of them, and they killed the prisoners by cutting their stomachs out and trailing their entrails along the Hill of Tara. You see, the one thing they didn't want was the Catholics and the Protestants joining together. Divide and conquer was an integral part of all British empires, and Portuguese empires, Dutch empires, you name them, all the empires. And maybe not so much the Portuguese Empire. If there was such a thing as a benevolent empire, the Portuguese Empire wasn't too bad, relatively. The Spanish was horrific, but the sacrifice of going to the priest and giving them your confession. Well, you know, he will tell his housekeeper, you know, what's his name, has a boyfriend, he's really gay. That's just what went on in Ireland. And you don't go to them. And that song, The Croppy Boy, was about a young United Irishman who goes to give his confession to the priest before he goes into battle. And the song has a lyric in it, something like, and there stood a yeoman in his red uniform with his fiery glare. The priest, the British officer, was pretending to be a priest to get the confession so he'd know where the rebels were, you know, when they were mobilizing for a battle against the British Army. And what happened was, it's not really about that. What it's about is, it's like, don't go to the priest to give confession. There was a way of actually saying the priest will go straight to the British barracks and tell the British officers that you're, because remember, it was the Vatican that gave Ireland to the English. Remember that. Always remember that. You Irish, this is why you Irish patriots who are all Catholics, you are the biggest traitors of all. Firstly, you're following a foreign religion, and secondly, that foreign religion, that Catholicism, is the one that gave your country away to the King of England. And that's why I have to laugh at people like Gemma O'Doherty, and now you're man on computing forever. I don't want to put people down, but they're all pushing Christianity now. You know, it's like, what? Have you not seen what Christianity has done to this country? There's from septic tanks full of babies to Magdalene laundries. But anyway, that's what the song was about, in a way, without being blasphemous, is to don't go to the priest and give them confession before you go to battle, because you go straight to the British officers and tell them what you're planning. And that's that song The Croppy Boy is about. A fly went down my mouth. This fly sacrificed himself for this video, probably. But, yes, when you make a sacrifice in a pagan sense, like you put fruit out at a statue and then the birds eat it later on, and then the hedgehogs eat it when it falls to the ground, you have sacrificed some of your income to a god, but it hasn't gone to the god. You understand? It hasn't gone to the statue of Minerva or the statue of Nemesis or the statue of Hermes or whatever, or the pagan site. It hasn't gone to them. It has gone to the wildlife that lives there from your pocket. So you've invested in the natural world. You understand? The money you've earned through your labours, you've given to wildlife through a sacrifice where the intermediate archetypal force is the pagan god, or the forest, or the woods, or the lakes, or the sea. All these kinds of things. You've done that. You could even do things like buy fish heads and go down to the docks and try to fit the fish heads in from the fishmongers, or give them, again, put them out in the wild for birds and stuff like that. Isn't that much better than going and giving confession? Isn't that much better than any other system? Because, why? Because it makes sense. You see, even in an economic sense, paganism makes more sense than Christianity. If we had a pagan financial system, we wouldn't have central banks, because a central bank is part of the same concept that gives you centralized government, centralized God. It's another byproduct of monotheism. You would not have that issue. You wouldn't have that. And this is how we will restore paganism in a practical sense. It's all very well and nice to say I'm a pagan and I do this, that and the other and I celebrate the solstice, but you've got to live like a pagan. You've got to think like a pagan. You've got to sacrifice like a pagan. And I can tell you, it's a lovely feeling. No one, you stand outside, no one goes to confession in Ireland anymore because Catholicism is basically dead except for a few old people and like Polish and Brazilian immigrants. But otherwise it's dead. But you could always stand aside, when we used to have confessions on a Saturday evening before tea time, you could stand outside any Catholic church in Ireland and you would see people coming out like this, right? You go to a pagan site or to the woods where you live or whatever, wherever you live in the wood, and you do what I just said or something similar to that, I guarantee you will walk away with a smile on your face. Because it's not just the money that you've invested into buying those vegetables and fruits from the organic market for those animals is an investment in nature. So it's capitalism with a purpose. It's capitalism with a meaning. It's a meaningful capitalism. Suddenly it's not dirty, filthy bankers' money. It's money that's invested in something real. Now, this is also another thing. Catholics in particular, but all Christians, still practice sacrifice in things like charity, big charity. That's another thing. Don't give money to charity. Give it to the homeless person on the street. If you have a friend or neighborhood if you win the lotto and you have $500,000 to spend, don't give it to the society, the Irish society or the American society for the blind or whatever. Find a blind person and buy them something that they need. That's how you do it. Cut out the middlemen, because the middlemen of everything, charity, banks, corporation, are all the products of the monotheistic Christian system. They're the priests, they're the cardinals, they're the monsignors, they're the nuns. And it's an inferior system. You see, they took the best of paganism and they weaponized it towards something that was soul destroying for humans. Like, you look at the Vestal Virgins, right? The Vestal Virgins of ancient Rome, some of them could marry. They were allowed the sex life. They were allowed. Some of them could marry after a while, after they left. They were allowed places in government. They were allowed to have says in the military, and they were replaced by the Catholic Church with nuns. And what did they do with the nuns? They locked them away. That's what they did with the nuns, and they punished them for being women. That's what happened. They dressed them in black rather than white. And again, they sacrificed them to their Abrahamic God. And when you start to see these things and you really start to understand how screwed over we have been, how our souls have been so damaged, how our minds have been wrecked by this nonsense that's been foisted upon us from the Middle East. And we can't always, I'm not blaming the people who came up with Abraham. I'm talking about how that was weaponized through autocratic structures such as Constantine and the Roman Empire, how that was taken over and weaponized in that sense. And you see, like, this is one of the reasons I don't do interviews anymore, because I'm sick and tired of someone coming in and then they might ask me about, like, if you see my Beyond Room 313 channel, you'll see that I do things on films like Hereditary, but I don't go on, oh, they're spooky, oh, the Satanists, I don't do it that way. And one of the reasons I got this alt media, I got sick of hearing people coming at me like with a Christian viewpoint. Also, I've said everything I've ever going to say, but this automatic assumption that anything in a music video is satanic, and it's just annoying. It just became, it's like, let's talk, it's like everything else. Where's the blank slate? If you're supposed to be an alternative thinker, that means you have a blank slate and you build up again with a new process that appeals to you, rather than one that's been foisted upon you. In my case, it was paganism, and rather than, well, I was kind of raised in a mixed background, and my parents, thankfully, were not religious or anything like that, so I wasn't forced to. Although I did make my first Holy Communion, I was never forced to go to church as a kid, because I even remember my outfit even saying things like that, like, they're a bunch of nonsense and stuff like that, even years ago, back when I was a kid, back in the early 80s. So thank God I didn't have to deal with that. And thank the gods I didn't have to deal with that. So sacrifice, yes, that's the thing, and it's one thing to have a cosplay paganism, where which is, if you want to dress up like a druid or a witch or a goddess or something, I have no problem with that. That's a little bit of fun, but that's a theatrical thing. Don't be confusing that with the real spiritual thing. If druids are alive today, they're dressed like me. They're dressed like this. This is how they're dressed. They're not dressed They're not going around dressed holding a staff and a cape. They're dressed like this. If same thing with true witches and warlocks and magicians. This is why it's called the occult. This is why I saw a documentary about Wicca, and they were talking about the Wicca is a secretive religion. But every Wiccan I know goes on about I'm a Wiccan, I'm a Wiccan, I'm a Wiccan, I mean, and they're always, it's just, and the same thing with the, there's no sense of the occult. It's not, and again, I know lots of people are, lots of very nice Wiccans and everything, but ultimately it's another form of an Abrahamic religion. I mean, it's based on capitalism. And even though I do think Gerald Gardner was a genius, in a lot of ways he really was, and whether he was real or not, it doesn't matter. He did quite an amazing thing in his own way. I think it's to get down to our own friend Crowley, yes, him again, who really has created all that stuff. In fact, I'm probably even standing here talking to you about sacrifice because of Crowley. And if I was to, this is another one I used to go and do interviews, they talk about Crowley like he was he's like a Satan, devil worshipper, paedophile, and all this nonsense. Where did they get it from? Bible Belt. I bet Crowley was a great guy to hang out with. I bet he was a lot of fun. I get that's the impression I get about him, and his image of being the beast and the greatest man in the world, or the most wickedest man in the world. That was theatre. Part of magic as well as theatre. It's playing. It's like playing games to sort of like the theatre of the mind, the theatre of the consciousness, the theatre of social interaction. So if you are going to, and that brings me finally in closing to sacrifice. So if you see that thing? If you, butterfly or something. If you are going to do the sacrifice thing, don't make a big deal about it. Don't put the pictures up on Facebook. Don't look for praise from your coven for doing it, because then it's not sacrifice. Just do it. Enjoy the process. Seek meaning in the moment. Venerate the old gods and get on with your life. Because that's another thing you learn as a pagan, that no one is better than anyone else. And that's another reason we are all going to be returned to paganism, is because there will be no more Catholics, Protestants, racial problems, issues. We will have tribal structures that will be stronger than ever, but they won't have a theocratic or a theological schism or issue between one another. And that's a powerful, powerful thing. That's one of the things I learned from Gerald Gardner, was that when he was a British civil servant, rather than hanging out at the chess club or the bowls club, he was going to meet the local tribes and the local shamans and talking to them. And that alone shows that Gerald Gardner was legit. So get sacrificing, stop praying, and let's make paganism great again.